Hi my friends, I would like to do a recap on the double slit experiment. And the reason I want to do that, because that is the one that everybody who's done a lot of analysis and the ones that talk about we live in a simulation talk about the double slit experiment, all right? And here's what some interesting things about this. So if you're not familiar with it, you might want to review it just to make sure you understand, because it's really important to understand why they're saying we live in a simulation, okay? But basically, the way it works is that if you take a photon or even electron, now they did other particles, they shoot it through two slits, like those two slits in the fence there, that if there is not anybody, a witness or observer, it acts like a wave, okay? The first minute they use an instrument or a witness or observer, then immediately it goes into a particle formation. So that it starts to pile through those slits, like it chooses one or the other. So it'll go through one or the other when it gets shot at, one at a time, and it'll form like a pile of sand on the back of, so it'll form like piles of sand on the back side of those two slits. I know there's multiple there, but it should be there'd be just being two there, okay? Now, if so when there's like someone that's an observer, it's like it went through both slits at the same time. It comes in a wave formation, okay? Now, what's interesting about that there is a fallacy that in this double slit experiment, I believe, because what the fallacy surrounds, in my opinion, because I was doing some thought about this, that now I'm gonna have to pause it because I gotta thoroughly think this out. I want to make it quick. Okay, now here's the fallacy part of it that I believe, and I don't really want to call it fallacy, because I'm just saying there's some unknown hidden truth that is not being exposed, or a fallacy to this situation. Because here's the problem with it. So they said if there is an observer, then nothing really exists. That's what the theory is, right? For example, there's even, they talked to Einstein once. They said when they came up with the double slit, this whole scenario, they told him, and they said, the moon doesn't really exist until there's an observer who actually looks to see there's an observer. And he didn't want to accept it. He said, well, you're telling me the moon is not there until one of us turns around, takes a peek, and says, oh my God, yes, the moon's there. Now, here's the issue with that, because Einstein could never really figure this out himself. He's like, well, I don't know he didn't want to believe it, but he said it's possible, right? And but here's the thing that's interesting about this. That I'm not saying that's not true, that the moon does not exist when we're not looking at it. But here's the thing is, in the double slit experiment, I keep saying it weird because I'm sorry, I've been playing this cold, my tongue is tingling. But anyway, so you have to apologize if I pronounce things kind of weird. But anyway, here's the problem with that. So okay, let's go back to that. Sorry, I realized that my video disappeared. That's why I stopped there briefly for a moment. All right, so here's the thing. I'm gonna go back to this. So here's the thing is, here's the issue, that if we're living in a simulation, so if there's nobody in this room, so picture this room that has these two slits there versus all these, that they shoot a thing in there and there's nobody there, so you have this wave, right? But what does that tell you? It tells you that the material is still there, that there's those two slits, whether they're made of cut into a board of metal or whatever they are, those slits still exist. That means even when there's no observer, that it still exists. Now, but here's the issue, is that somewhere down the road, this computer system may say, well, I know what you're doing and I'm ahead of you, so I'm gonna go ahead and pretend that part of this is real, that part of this material, those two slits being a piece of metal or board, is truly there, and you shot a photon. Well, I'm sorry, a proton. Proton. Yeah, let's say a photon through there, and let's just say electron. Let's say you shot electron through there, and now I'm going to say that you actually it makes it become real still, right? But what really bothers me about this whole thing is that whole part I just said, that no matter what, whether there's an observer or not, that the slits still exist, right? They exist no matter what, because they go through, because what will happen is that when it's no observers there, it'll make like it'll make like I'm trying to use some example. It'll make that. It'll see like this. It'll make this really bright area in dead center, which is that light here, and then it'll create these other like smaller light balls going off each direction. Okay, off each direction, so that it still looks kind of like a wave formation versus being piled up, right? Because otherwise it'd be a pile of, here, and then another one here would be this like thing here when it's actually when there's an observer. So I'm not really good at explaining this, but what I'm trying to tell you is that the material of that room, everything still exists, and also that double slit exists whether there's an observer or not, right? Because what should happen if the whole thing becomes just something that's in motion, you shot a photon or electron, then it should be a constant solid line just spread out way wide. If those double slits didn't exist on that metal, you know what I mean, carved in the metal, there's two slits, it'd be a solid line going completely end to end, just a broad line until it just dissipates, right? Versus how they see today where there's a wave where it actually it's called interference pattern. It interferes with each other and creates multiple little balls diminishing on each spectrum going each direction, okay? So and why is that? Because that to me is something that I would want to know. I want to know why do we have these this slit behavior, whether it's observed or not? So that tells us that things that are physically in place, not in motion, there's the key, that they exist whether they're observed or not observed. So that means probably if I drive out of here, the street will exist whether I'm here, there's an observer or not. That building will observe or not. But the light coming off of it, that's something energy in motion, because it's actually something that's moving. It has to do something with movement and photons being shot towards us. That probably, this light may not exist if there's not an observer. It becomes a wave. Well, they've proven that. They've proven that this light right here, shooting at us right now, I put my finger over it. If there's not an observer, that light doesn't even really exist. It becomes a wave. Because all those photons coming from it are in a wave formation, right? That's hard to understand, right? It's kind of like, what's going on here, right? So we've already proven that. That's what they're saying, right? Well, anyway, so, and so it's like, the reason I bring this up, he's like, well, I thought this had something about simulation, because there's still a lot of unanswered things, because if we're going to understand the way the simulation works, what are its rules? The rules are that I can build a pole over there, and it'll probably exist, but the electricity running through it may or may not exist because it's in motion. And it depends on this other reality, this earth of the observer or witness. That's why it's important to me. Because that means that things that exist, like even these rocks or a rock of this, will exist whether observer or not, right? And that's an important piece, because somebody said if there was no observer, some of these physicists are more even than some of these that are spiritual, they have the ones that are spiritual and physicists, they claim the universe would cease to exist if there was an observer. Well, I'm not so sure, because we'd probably just have the earth as a piece of rock floating around, because what I just said would disprove that there is something material, that something's in motion, that those are the ones that become, energy in motion would be the difference. Something that's in motion, right? And so I don't know. So I'm just throwing it out there because I'm trying to come up with some thoughts about this. Now here's the thing that really surprises me, though. There must be a natural, there must be about divine beings. Here I go again. You say, oh my gosh, you're Kirk's, but trying to say how there's the awakened ones are special stuff. I kind of think so, because here's the thing is, if I cannot believe that all these other all these other tests and experiments haven't been done with all this double slit experiment, because if I was in charge of those labs, this has been around for 200 years, by the way, 200 years, then I would have been, I've been running through a pyramid on one side of it, a crystal clear pyramid. I've been shooting babies through it. I would do all sorts of different things, magnets, see what happens when you have a magnetic field when you're shooting it through there. Can you mess it up, have a magnetic field in one of the slits versus not? what do photons, electrons do when they get shot through there? What do lightning bolts do? I mean, seriously, I would be just tearing this up, because that would be, I'd want to know what is going on here and the truth. I'm not kidding you. I would do experiments with, all these different things, having waves come back at the same direction. What happens when they hit, when they both coming through at the same time, shooting through both angles, bidirectional. What happens when you stick a mirror in one? They have done some mirrors in the quantum erasers, which I'm going to bring up now. So there, I lost my video, my thing, and it doesn't really matter. But I'm sorry babbling about this, because this ain't, but I think that it's important that we kind of, to understand the truth of this reality, and what kind of will we have to help manage our lives in a situation. It's important to understand the environment we live in, right? The tools that we have, and this is part of the tools, so that's why I keep bringing it up. But here's the thing, a quantum erasers is real. I actually sat down with a guy in Longmont, and he was actually testing this in a small little laboratory he had in this, it was more of a commercial building, but he was just doing it just to have fun. And I said, and he was actually trying to, and he said he had a couple of quantum erasers. If you don't understand what it is, it's where you're bouncing, and you have, it's kind of like rewinding time, history. And that's why you're erasing the reality. And that's why it's important, my friends, because, that's what's freaky about the quantum erasers. That it does mean that retroactivity is possible, where I told you what we're doing today, you and I, we can influence the past. We may not completely change it, but we can influence the past that we are living in right now. Isn't that amazing? That retrocausality is probably real. And boy, I tell you what, I wish I had more power in this retrocausality, because I've caused myself a mess. I'm not kidding you. And I'd like to unwind that, but that's okay, because, time is flexible, especially if this is a simulation, like I was telling you. If it's simulation, you can rewind it just like a video game, rewind this and that. But we don't know if the controllers that got us here, if they're going to allow that to occur, where maybe this thing's gone so bad, this timeline, maybe they're going to show us a good timeline down the road. I wish that was true. I'm not kidding you, because, man, I'm telling you. But you remember, too, whoever controls the clock is the God. And that's what concerns me, in a way. Why am I concerned? Because everybody claims the Mandela effect, this and that, it's satanic and it's evil. Well, that means that Satan, or this beast system, has control of the clock and time, that we don't have any influence on the good side. And that means you're in a nightmare, my friends, because, I repeat, whoever controls the clock is the God. Because you got to realize, if you had enough time, enough energy, and if you had enough, give enough time, anything's possible. So whoever controls the clock, they give enough time, they can create this reality we're exposing to, because we don't even know how long we've been here. And there's issues. So I'm hoping that the controllers, the good side, have control of this, and not going to let us just go down the tube and have an even more nightmare, because this ain't fun, my friends. I repeat. Now, I know I told you there's some ones working with me and working with you, and some others that show us some positivity. But I want to see more influence from this, because this place is getting to be a disaster. And I'm not telling you, I want to exit already. This place is so stinking rotten and evil. I'm about done with it. So that's why I think that it's important that we understand what the you take away our hope, and we've got nothing. And they said the quickest way to break somebody in this world, or even in anybody's reality, even a child, is break away their hope. And you give them nothing, and then all of a sudden they're done, they're finished. And that's what's sad, is a lot of us are losing hope. That's why we look at these. That's why I'm looking at these things about physics, all these things, and what's going on in this reality, because it gives me hope. And that's what's important to me, because I can see that there's more to the story that gives me hope. Because the way it is today, if you get into the book now, I'd be disappointed. This place has gotten so bad and rotten. It's not, I'm just disappointed. I'm disappointed in everybody, the ones on the other side, ourselves, everybody. I'm just disgusted, disappointing. So it gives me hope. Anyway, take care and love you all.